Hey, it's me, Jeff, the SP Spaz, back with another scintillating video in my body transformation series, um, where I'm talking about how I lost over 80 pounds and got in much better health than I used to be before. So, what I thought I would do here in the next bit of the timeline here, because in the last video I talked about my attempts to diet and various things over the years. Um, Focusing on really the main 2008 and 2010, where I kind of did a more active attempt to do that, to lose weight and get in better shape. Um, and I want to talk about what I started doing in 2017 that has resulted in this transformation now. But I wanted to do one more video um, where I talked about kind of some other health things that happened on the way to this. I also said I was going to talk more about stories on the Men's Health Program. I want to say real quick one thing that I thought of that I didn't put in the last video was that the first diet that I did on the personal trainer program was one called the Testosterone Advantage Diet. And the funny thing about having a computer calculate these things for you as far as what you're supposed to do for calories and protein and carbs and all that is that it's going off based whatever formula it has for your height and weight and how to create a calorie deficit. And of course, what they use is what they call the BMR, basal metabolic rate, I believe is what it stands for. So the concept is how many calories you have to eat in order to just maintain your body, in terms of to function on a daily basis. And then they, subtract from that to figure out how many calories that you would need to eat less than that in order to have a calorie deficit and thus lose weight. And so, of course, when I started doing that program, I was, whatever it was, 250 pounds or more. And so it calculated that I needed quite a bit of calories even to have a slight deficit, because it was calculating not for a huge dramatic deficit, but 1 or 2 pounds a week loss kind of thing, which is still quite a bit, but it wasn't like trying to do one of those drop 100 pounds in 30 days type of extreme dieting things. So the program would automatically have these meal plans, and obviously they were in general made for people who did not weigh as much as I did, because, or at least didn't have as much fat as I did. I don't know, but maybe some of them were like more bodybuilder type people that were actually trying to gain weight as long as it was muscle. But on the Testosterone Advantage diet, which was a higher fat diet than some of the others, it was still not a low carb, high fat diet, which is what I ended up doing in this most recent transformation. But that's not what it was. But it was higher fat than any of their other diet plans. And it kind of pitched itself as being sort of like the manly diet plan. So yeah, okay, there was some appeal in the way that kind of the marketing of it. And it also seemed like it would probably be the simplest to do for my particular diet habits up to that point, because the abs diet and a couple of the other ones they had on there seemed like they were going to be much tougher as far as having much fewer calories than I was used to, because you come from eating whatever, whenever, and eating a lot of chips and dip and soda and things like that on a regular basis, pizza and hamburgers and all that, and then you go to something that's telling you take like 2 slices of turkey and a little spoon of cranberry sauce and some spinach and roll it up in a whole wheat tortilla, and that's your lunch. And I was kind of like, yeah, that's more like that's the appetizer. Then I'm like, where's the real lunch? So the Testosterone Advantage diet was definitely not like that. And in fact, the funny thing is, at the beginning of it, it was too much food that they were telling me to eat. It would be like, your lunch is 2 turkey sandwiches, and the turkey sandwiches they were recommending each had a half pound of turkey on them. So it was a pound of turkey, and it wasn't just a pound of turkey by itself. It was on a sandwich with vegetables, mayo, and whole wheat bread. And that wasn't even it. And it was like also 2 cups of cottage cheese, which I don't know if you like cottage cheese or not, because I don't know who you are or who's watching this. But even if you like cottage cheese, just pounding 2 cups of cottage cheese at once is not an easy thing to do without anything like added to it or any kind of other thing. And so when I did that, I measured out 2 cups of cottage cheese and added it to my plate or a bowl or whatever, and I was like, really? I'm supposed to eat this massive amount of cottage cheese, and that's not even the whole meal? So I would end up defeating the purpose of it, because I would mix in some crackers or something like that to put the cottage cheese on, and still not even finish all the cottage cheese, because I'd end up, obviously some of my calories were going to the crackers, because I had to have something sort of balance that. It couldn't just be downing 2 cups of cottage cheese at one time. So yeah, there were some adjustments. Originally, when I did they had this thing where you could, it would automatically generate a shopping list based on what you were supposed to do in the meal plans. So, I did that, and of course went to the store and bought all these things. It's not like I was made of money. I mean, made even less than I do now. So it wasn't like I could afford to buy the whole store, but I spent way more than I normally did, because I was trying to do my best to follow along this diet. And so I got some things I had never tried before that were on the diet, like veggie hot dogs. Yeah, those were absolutely horrifically bad. So things like that I wolfed it down anyway when I was doing that particular meal, because I'm like, well, this is what it asked for, so I'm going to try to do this. But yeah, I learned from my second shopping trip while I was doing that diet was way different from my first, in terms of the knowledge of what I could eat and couldn't eat, how much to get of various things, because I was trying to go by their quantities, and like I didn't need to have like 6 tubs of cottage cheese or whatever, because I couldn't possibly eat that much. So some of the things I had done the previous thing that I talked about doing, some of the lessons learned from the abs diet stuff, I couldn't eat as much at one time anyway. So I had sort of hurt myself in that area for doing that diet. But what I did was I kind of changed it up. I substituted some things. I learned sort of as I went how I could sort of manipulate that diet. And I did the same thing when I was trying to follow the abs diet. And I think there might have been one other one on there that I did for a while. The abs diet thing was kind of funny, because it was so geared around smoothies, where you put a lot of good stuff in a blender and mix it up, and you have that as your breakfast pretty much every day, and as a snack sometimes, things like that. And so I was doing that like every morning. I was getting up and blending a smoothie, and somehow I was able to wake up in time to do this. Whereas, years after that, including now, even though I've been a lot more disciplined in terms of my eating, I don't know how I did that back then, because I don't wake up early enough to have time to make smoothies before I go to work. So I'm like, how did I do that again? I don't even know for sure how I did it, but somehow I did. Anyway, I spent 8 minutes talking about those things when I said it was only going to be part of the video, but I'll real quick, I'll kind of talk about the health issues that I had, some of which are genetic, some of which I brought upon myself by my bad behavior, some combination of the two in most cases. But when I first got the office job that I have now back in 2005, I already had a leg pain on my left leg. I had pulled a muscle in it a while before that, and basically I've done this several times, where especially when I was more out of shape, I would wake up in the morning and I would stretch my leg too hard before I really was thinking about it, and I would like tweak a muscle in a way that hurt really bad. And most of the time I did that, it wouldn't take more than a portion of the day to recover from that, where it wasn't feeling sore anymore by the end of the day. But sometimes it was worse than others, and that particular time I did it, it just didn't recover. It just stayed sore, and not only stayed sore, but it would tighten up. Like basically any time that I would be in a sitting position where I couldn't stretch my leg out in any way, it would start to tighten up again and start hurting really badly. So it would be something that caused a problem when I was trying to watch a movie or a theater show or something like that, because anytime that you're in a space where you can't like stretch your legs out, it would be hurting me. So when I got in the office, I was putting on slathering on the Bengay and other cream stuff, trying to like reduce this, taking pain pills and things like that to reduce this. Well, I finally went to a doctor about it, And there are two things that happened at that doctor's appointment. The first of which is the amusing thing, and then the second thing is also sort of amusing in a way, if you think about it. But the first thing was that the doctor I went to gave me anti-inflammatory drugs that basically after I took for a few days, my leg was fine. Like it really didn't take very long before my leg felt completely better. So it was like, my resistance to go to the doctor and stuff like that, ends up being something where it's basically cured very simply because it's something where pulling the muscle caused an inflammation that just never subsided. And that's not too surprising as the things that I've learned about how inflammation is affected by the diet, because my diet was still terrible. So, but on that doctor's visit, the really amusing thing that happened was that the doctor kept repeatedly taking my blood pressure because she didn't believe it could be as high as it was. So she even like used multiple devices, multiple machines, and she was this short Indian lady. So at one point she was like, "I do not understand this. His blood pressure cannot be that high. He is healthy. I do not, And so I was just like, "Oh wow. Maybe I should do something about the blood pressure." But of course, it was still months after that I did anything. And sometime later, I just happened to be in a store where they had one of those check your blood pressure machines, and I did it. And they have these sections that sort of give you an idea of when your numbers come up, like where you are at in terms of like normal, mild hypertension, severe hypertension. And the severe hypertension actually has a maximum where beyond that is like off the chart. And when I had my numbers, I was off that. So according to these, machines that they have in the store, I should have been dead, because I'm beyond severe hypertension to some new level that doesn't even register. And so I saw that and I was like, yeah, okay, I probably should get something done about that. And then, probably waited another 5 or 6 months. And during the time I was at the office, it started to get worse because the stress of my job started to get worse. And it started obviously to raise my blood pressure even from the dangerous levels it already was. So I started to have basically like times where I couldn't focus my eyes on anything because I would get like dizzy spells, and like times where it was just, I was gone, and I had days where I have a lunch hour at my job where, for in the middle of the day, get to go leave and come back. And I was using my lunch hour to come home and lie down on my couch because I was getting like these migraine headaches that the entire lunch hour I was just trying to take that opportunity to lie down for an hour because it was bothering me that much. And there was a day where I was at work and one of my coworkers walked up to me and just saw the way my eyes were looking, my face was looking, and said, "Do you need me to take you home, or to a doctor or something? Because you do not look well." And I let him take me home, of course, not to a doctor. But I did ask him at some point, who did he go to for a doctor? Who did he recommend? And I'm really glad I did, because the doctor that he referred me to, I still go to now. And me and doctors, I won't get into it for a long time on this video because I want to kind of wrap it up here pretty soon. But I've not had a real good history with most doctors. Have most of the time thought most doctors I've encountered have been the type of people that are like, the whole time that I'm in with them, they're looking at me and talking to me like, why are you wasting my time? Like, you're just this person that I've got to see for a couple minutes and then get away from. Whereas my current doctor is somebody that I actually feel like I can talk to, and he listens to what I say, and he's not in any hurry to, run off to another patient, and I'm not wasting his time no matter what it is I talk about or bring up or ask him. So it's the most comfortable I've ever felt with a doctor. So, and so I'm really glad I did that, because when I went to him, the first thing, that he did was like, okay, we need to do something to get your blood pressure under control. The other thing was they measured my heart rate and said it was like way over normal, something like 131 beats a minute or something like that, which again was like off their charts. So he actually ended up giving me two different medications. So one is, or actually technically it's three, but one of them is two combined into one pill. So it's two pills a day. But anyway, so one was technically for blood pressure and the other for heart rate, but they sort of work in tandem with each other is kind of the idea. So yeah, I had those medical problems, and of course, he would talk about diet and exercise and things, and saying, it'd be good if you lost some weight. And I asked him if there was a particular diet plan he recommended, and he said, the South Beach diet was a pretty good one. So I looked into that a little bit, and he was like talked about trying to reduce sugar and uh, white bread and pasta and things that are like the higher glycemic carbohydrates and things like that. So I had some of those ideas already introduced to me before I started doing the super low carb diet later. But anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the attempts I'd done and some of the health issues I was dealing with before I started this transformation. And in the next video, in this series, I will get into what I did in 2017 when I got to the point again where I was like, oh, I've got to do something about this, and still waited several months after that, and then really got to that desperation point, which is what happens for me and a lot of other SP type people. Is we have to really, really be physically faced with a choice where we have to do something about something in order to change our behavior. And so I did reach that point, and I will talk about that in the next video on what ultimately how I started the journey that I'm on, continuing now in transforming my body. So if you liked this video, be sure to click like whether you liked it or not, just to hype me up, and share it with all your friends who want to hear amazing stories about dieting and health issues, because who doesn't? And subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell for notifications if you have that, so that you'll get all of my fresh new content as soon as I upload it, and never miss an exciting moment in the life of me, Jeff, the SP Spaz. And we'll see you next time.